Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Tigers Talk Rugby. Before we get started, for those listening on Facebook and YouTube, we are on podcasting platforms. These include Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and Spotify. So with that, I'm Ethan Richards.
I'm Beckett Rice.
And I'm CJ Bakle. And today we have a great special guest. He is the 8th overall pick in the MLR draft, a former president and captain at University of Notre Dame, and former All-American honorable mention, Mike Matarazzo. How's it going, Mike?
Hi, guys. Great to be on. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you on.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a good list of questions for you, and we're excited to share the newest ATL, or one of the newest ATL rugby guys join us. So with that, how did you get into rugby? Where did it start for you?
Yeah, so I actually got into the game relatively late. It was my freshman year in college at Notre Dame. One of the guys that lived across the hall from me, he actually played rugby at ND, and he ended up dragging me out to a practice because he said, "You're a big guy. You'll be decent at rugby." So he dragged me out. It turns out that first training session I had was our only pure fitness session of the season.
No.
Yeah, it made an interesting introduction to rugby. But I kind of just all clicked from there. It was frustrating at first trying to learn everything, but eventually I fell in love with it.
Yeah. Oh, I know. For a lot of people, college is where it starts for a lot of people in the U.S. From what it seems, what we've kind of gathered. So.
Yeah, I say like over half of Clemson's team is that way.
For sure.
Easy.
So, yeah, so do you have like a particular memory that you have with the rugby club or with the program?
I'd say one of my earlier ones was freshman year. It was one of my first few matches starting. It was against Army, the West Point, the military academy. And it was one of the playoff matches in the old varsity cup. So it was a big game, really physical, really tough. We ended up losing by a few scores, but it was just incredibly physical. And what made it interesting was it was the first game my parents had ever watched me play.
Oh, no.
It was their first game of rugby too. They had never seen it before. So I'd been trying to talk up the sport and say, how much I loved it. And, no, I wouldn't get hurt. It was fine. It's a great sport. And after that match, I'd ended up getting like cleated in the face a few times, so I had my nose ended up crooked. My face was bloody, a black eye, hands were all bruised up. And my parents just ended up being mortified. But I think my coaches ended up talking them down, and now they love watching my games. So it all turned out all right.
I mean, that's just a sign of a job well done.
Yeah. Playing against any of the military academies is a doozy.
Oh, man, You can tell me that one.
Oh, yeah. Because we play that again.
Yeah, we play Navy a couple times every year. So, and every time you walk out, you're like, oh, man, you're about to there's going to be some blood. There's going to be a broken bone. Something's going to happen.
And they just don't
kicks
stop.
In the rocks.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, every time they get the ball, you're like, I wonder what they're going to do. Well, they're going to run it straight at us. Yep, there it is.
Yep.
Do you guys have a big rival at ND? Like, what was one team that you guys would like face against, and you're like, oh yeah, these guys are going to be a rival?
Yeah. We were independent, so it wasn't like we were in a conference where we had that like one big team, but we would play a few teams consistently. I would say Ohio State was always a big matchup for us, definitely. Indiana, Davenport became a bit of a rivalry for us. So yeah, there was some games that were consistent across the few years that were good.
That's really cool.
That's awesome.
So do you have a particular player that you look up to during your rugby career?
I'd say that definitely the professional player that I'm closest with is Nick Sveta. He's on the national team right now, and I've been able to have some conversations with him, and he's been a really big help for me. Just bouncing things off him on how to train. He's a similar position to me. He plays lock. He's similar background to me, so it's really really good to be able to see someone who came from similar circumstances be playing at the top level. So it's nice to be able to talk to him about different things in rugby.
For sure. I know
That's really cool.
actually we had somebody on Reddit ask, we posted a couple questions which we'll get to later, actually asking if you had ever met Nick Savetta. And for those listening, the reason why is because he was also a Notre Dame player. And I believe he was one of the first from Notre Dame to go pro, right? If that's correct.
Yeah, he was the first one to go pro.
To my knowledge, I'd say he's the only one right now.
Well, and you.
I don't want to.
Yeah, now you.
Yeah, well, not me, I guess.
Did he ever do like camps at Notre Dame, or would he come visit semi often or something to talk to the guys, or was it just after you got drafted?
It started out mostly we would just chat over the phone. I just wanted to get in touch with him, just to be able to talk to somebody with his type of experience, and he was always really welcoming and open about it. And then we had a fall break trip, I believe, where we played Iona College, and he happened to be in New York at the time, so he came to a few of our matches, and we were able to talk in person.
That's awesome.
That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, as you're the newest Notre Dame professional player, how did it feel getting taken 8th overall? And what was your friends and family's reaction to that? Yeah,
it was great. I'm pretty excited that the MLR did the whole draft thing. I think it was pretty great for the league. It's interesting for me because I was actually on a road trip at the time with my college buddies, and we were in Montana, middle of nowhere, Montana. So I didn't have great internet access or phone access or anything like that. But we ended up watching the draft at this hotel lodge, and I was, with a bunch of my closest friends. So it ended up being really great. But it was stressful also because the way it worked out was Atlanta had called me the day before and basically said that they planned on taking me if I was available. But that was kind of the last I had heard from them until a couple minutes before my pick was broadcasted. So, all my friends were watching it now. We're all expecting me to get drafted, and I hadn't heard from anybody. And I was like, man, something goes wrong and I don't get picked now. This is really going to suck. But they ended up calling me a few minutes before, and it ended up being really fun.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, we know quite a few of the guys at Atlanta now. So welcome to the Southeast. Yeah. So
thank you.
It gets hot.
So
it does get hot. Luckily, Atlanta's not as humid as some other places in the Southeast.
It's true.
Yeah, I think it's better than training in the cold, though.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one.
Yeah. Definitely. Hopefully, we'll get to see you in a game in a few months.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Yeah, we got that coming up. Speaking of, how is been your transition? How has it been coming to Atlanta and coming to be a part of ATL rugby?
Yeah, Atlanta's been great. The staff and my teammates were all very welcoming, very helpful. The facilities we have and the medical staff and the training staff we have all been great. It was when I first got down there, it was the middle of, the peak of coronavirus stuff. So everything was in lockdown still. So I wasn't able to get into a gym for a few months. But then once I got into Atlanta, I was able to get into our facility, and it was great being active and being able to lift again. And I was able to play the 404 season, which is just awesome, being able to play some rugby matches when most of the rest of the country wasn't playing. So I'm extremely grateful for that. And now I'm just excited to get back there in a few weeks and start training again.
That's awesome.
That's interesting.
Go ahead, Beckett.
I was going to say that's interesting that you got to play, and I'm sure very exciting you got to play for the 404 because I think I've watched a little bit of their stuff, not recently, but it's very cool that I think MLR teams are building up academy sides. And Atlanta, aside from the old former Raptors, I think might have been like the first team with like a academy side. So it's really awesome that they have that. I'm sure it was you found it very enjoyable and very helpful.
Definitely, and I hope going forward, and I think they definitely will. I think more MLR sides will start building out their academies, and I think eventually it'd be great to have a sort of academy league running under the MLR season, because the more guys you can get playing top quality rugby year round, the better it's going to be.
Absolutely. We actually we interviewed another graduate out of college who went into the draft and he got picked to NOLA, and he said that they were getting an academy side and getting that program built out in Louisiana. So it does seem to be spreading and growing through the country as a better concept, and following that more international structure of having the academies and working guys up through it all. So I'm really excited to see that develop. And I think Atlanta was definitely had it right in their mind from the beginning, because they're definitely one of the, I think has got one of the biggest areas and understanding of how to use it when it comes to population. So moving on from the academy stuff, what are your expectations for the MLR this year? And do you have any big predictions for like East-West?
I mean, hopefully we'll be able to have crowds early on in the season. That's the first thing, because I think it was pretty encouraging seeing some of the matches last year, and the type of crowds they were getting. So, for the growth of the league, the sooner we can get people in stands, the better. And just from a player's perspective too, having crowded stadiums makes it more fun.
For sure.
And I think in terms of expectations for this year, I think we've seen a lot of talent coming into the league this year. And I would say some of that is probably because of the coronavirus kind of messing with leagues overseas. So I think there's going to be a lot of talent in the league this year, and I think it's going to be really competitive. And to make predictions, it's hard for me right now because I haven't been able to see a lot of these teams play with the cancellation last year. But I'll say in the East we'll have Atlanta for sure in the championship, and then
what I like to hear.
And in the West, I guess you can't really knock off Seattle unless until somebody beats them, right? So defending champs,
True.
I think you have to put them in for the title right now.
Yeah, I think
what I'm saying.
Our resident Seattle fan over here, Beckett, is just all about it. When we did our episode last week, we talked a little bit about MLR stuff. He had like his shirt on, his hat was in the background. He was all ready to talk about them. So I think San Diego versus Seattle is becoming the battles of the Titans on the West Coast. So
yeah. Bit of a rivalry going on there.
LA too is signing some good players, so
that's true.
They could be a surprise team.
Is there any speaking of like all this talent, is there any players or teams that you really want to go against and maybe like play against? So like we had we would have, or you might know Jason Dam, like he said that at one point in time he was excited to play guys like Bastareaud and from like New York. So do you have like share that same feeling?
Yeah, I definitely say I feel the same way about that, because you watch these guys on TV, and I'm relatively new to the game, so I haven't been watching since I was a kid, but for the last 4 years I've been watching guys like Bastareaud and guys like Rob Shaw now in San Diego. So as the MLR fills up with more players like that, it's going to be really exciting playing against them.
For sure.
Is there any one particular person that you're going to line up against and be like, oh, I would love to tackle him?
Yeah, I'd say it would probably be Rob Shaw, just because the things he's achieved in his career, and he's the same position as me. So that's who I'd have to go with.
I like that pick.
Yeah,
I would love to see that matchup. I would love to see that game.
Yeah.
So we did, as I had mentioned earlier, we got a couple questions from Reddit. And we already kind of covered one since you had mentioned that you have met Nick Civetta and you've kind of been in contact with him. So one other question, or one of the other questions was, when you first came to Notre Dame, were you a lock or did you end up changing positions into being a lock?
Yes, I was a lock. I think that's just the product of throwing the new tall guy into the lock position.
Yeah.
Obviously, I wasn't
Resident
very
tall boy.
skilled starting out. So yeah, I started at lock, and then I actually played lock for my first 3 years, and then my senior year I moved to number 8.
Okay.
Very nice.
So when you first got there and you were set up playing as a lock, when it got time to learning how to do lineouts, like what was your like perception of that?
It's weird because they kind of have to just throw you in the fire with everything. Because Notre Dame is like Clemson. A lot of the guys haven't played before, but there's a good portion that have, and there's not like a big preseason prep time. So you have games pretty quick. So
Right.
You can't really afford this build up where you're teaching new guys the game, right? So you have to just throw them into the fire. So they kind of told me like, yeah, you're the guy that's gonna get lifted, and I'm like, really? Like, why do you lift the big guys? Like that doesn't make sense to me. But anyways, and then yeah, so first time jumping, it just feels so weird, and you flail your legs and everything.
Yeah.
But eventually you realize you just have to be stiff like a board, and you get used to it.
For sure.
Yeah.
I love hearing people's first experiences with getting lifted in a line out, because like every single individual is like has that moment of like the O moment, like
Yeah.
the I am going up in the air being held up by two guys. Like this is wild. So I thought I would throw that at you and see what your experience was.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I kicked my back lifter my first time.
Oh no.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I can feel that right in my chest.
Common mistake.
Yeah. And then the last question we have from Reddit was, how has playing baseball in high school transferred to playing rugby?
Yeah, so unfortunately, there's really not that much crossover. I'd say probably the biggest thing is just hand-eye coordination from baseball. That's a huge part of the sport, and it really helps in any sport, but it's hugely helpful in rugby to have good hands. And then just other little things is, like judging fly balls helps when you're under a high ball in rugby. So that's just a little thing. But besides that, there's really not too much crossover. But ironically, the physicality of rugby is something I was the least prepared for, but it's something that I enjoy the most now.
For sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think that sort of concludes the rugby related, more serious rugby related portion of the questions we have. And now we have a few more.
Yeah. So these will be rapid fire. So these are going to be some rapid fire questions. So CJ, I want you to take it away. Answer them as fast as you can and as quick as you can.
And as best as you can.
And as best as you can.
Yeah.
All right. So number one question is, who wins in an arm wrestling contest, Trevor Lawrence or Ian Book?
Ian Book. Lawrence's arms are too skinny.
That's yeah, like I said in our previous interview with Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence, you haven't seen Trevor Lawrence nowadays. That man is huge.
This is a big boy.
He's a big. Yeah. There's a reason why he's the number one
whiteboard out. Let me get my whiteboard out and explain why the longer arms are going to help him here. So,
the leverage. That's
physics.
Yeah. All right. Second question is, what is your guilty pleasure TV show / movie?
The Office.
All right.
Yeah, I can watch The Office. I've watched those seasons over so many times now.
And you're just trying to get it in before they finally take it off Netflix.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Third question. Which person out of this list did not play rugby? You've got Henry Cavill, Mark Cuban, Matt Damon, or Bill Clinton.
Matt Damon.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was only in the movie.
Yeah, Henry Cavill gave me some pause there, but the rest I knew.
All right, and then the final one is: Would you rather fight one Faf de Klerk-sized duck or 30 duck-sized Faf de Klerks?
Oh man, the duck-sized Faf de Klerks, because
Yeah.
I feel like ducks already have the Faf de Klerk mentality to them.
Very. Oh my goodness. Well, he's figured out Faf de Klerk right there.
Yeah, there it is.
Well, I just said that Faf de Klerk is already kind of the size of a duck anyway, so.
Just fight the one.
Oh gosh. All right. Well, awesome. Mike, it was great having you on with us.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great. It's been fun, and I appreciate you guys having me on again.
Absolutely. We'll love catching up with you. Hopefully, maybe after y'all's season is over with ATL, and we could hear more about how the season went for you personally.
Yeah. Hopefully, there'll be fans in the stands week 1, and we'll be able to see you guys there.
For sure.
Yeah. Hopefully, we're some of those fans. Yep.
Yeah.
That's our goal for sure.
Yeah.
So, with that, thanks everybody for listening to the episode. If you want to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, whatnot, it's at Tigers Talk Rugby. If you want to subscribe, you can subscribe to us on Anchor. It could be $1 a month, $5 a month, or $10 a month, up to you. Every dollar counts in helping us make this better each week. So, CJ, do you have anything to tell?
Everybody just needs to go watch rugby. That's all I got to say.
Awesome.